my beautiful grief growers, and welcome to another Facebook Live, this time on Mondays. We're jumping back to Mondays just to change it up a bit. Works a little bit better for my work schedule, works a little bit better for people who are tuning in the middle of their work day. So I'm so excited to see you. This week I want to talk to you about how grief is like an involuntary scavenger hunt. And this notion actually came to me when I was writing and editing and recording the interview that I did for the podcast this week with Alexia Leachman, who she hosts the podcast Fear-Free Childbirth and actually helps women overcome fear and anxiety and tocophobia in relation to being pregnant, giving birth, a lot of fears that normal women have. And part of the conversation that we had at about the midpoint of the podcast is how she tried searching, she tried seeking, she tried finding. In the midst of her grief, she literally tried on so many things to help her address her feelings of grief and address her feelings of loss, what she was feeling, to overcome and to talk through, to work her way through the death of her mom. So she tried things like Reiki, she tried things like getting into coaching practices, she tried things like therapy, she tried becoming a DJ for a while. So she did a lot of weird and interesting things to address the feelings of grief that were coming up for her. And this was about a 1 to 2.5 year process for her. And that kind of got me thinking about what a lot of people like to call the journey or the path or the road of grief. And for some reason, throughout all of my writing and my reading and my researching and podcasting about grief, for some reason those phrases, journey, path, road, never seemed to quite 100% fit it, like lock in for me as appropriate descriptions for grief. Because for the most part, journeys, paths, roads, these are all things that we choose to walk on, that we choose to travel on, that we choose to take part in. And grief isn't quite like that. To me, grief is like an involuntary scavenger hunt. And it's involuntary because we don't ask to go on these roads, these journeys, these paths. We get kind of thrust onto them as a result of our grief, as a result of our loss, whether it was a death, a divorce, diagnosis, child loss, pet loss, job loss. Whatever we have lost has thrust us onto this path of searching and seeking and finding and recalibrating to find this new normal. But there is this involuntary component of it, this painful component of, I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be on this journey. I didn't want to take this road. I don't want to be on this path. I don't want to be making these decisions or on this quest for myself. I don't want to have to recalibrate. So that's the involuntary part of it. And then the scavenger hunt part of it is a little bit different, because journeys, roads, paths, they all have kind of set endpoints. They have set destinations. They have these places that we're supposed to end up. And with scavenger hunts, it's not really like that. There's a seeking and a searching and a finding, but there's not a specific goal in mind. There's not a specific place you're supposed to end up. You kind of just are going along on the hunt, and sometimes you hit a dead end, and sometimes you find things you didn't expect to find, and you're following these little threads, these little tidbits, these little pieces of your past self or of your loved ones or of things that randomly interest you or keep coming up for you, and that is what makes up the scavenger hunt. And sometimes you do hit dead ends. Sometimes you try things on and they don't work for you in this new normal that you're trying to find. And sometimes you really hook on to something and you follow that path for a really long time, and it ends up being incorporated in your afterlife, the before and the after life, after loss. So grief is an involuntary scavenger hunt for me. And I tried on a lot of things in my own scavenger hunt, and you could say that I'm still trying on things in my own scavenger hunt. I'll tell you on the podcast episode this week, which you can listen to, has a bit of examples of the things I tried on, including grief recovery and Reiki, which I still work with in my day-to-day life, but things like dropping $700 for a writing course, or trying to start 2 businesses. One was a vegan cooking blog, and the other one was called The Next 12, and actually ushered college students into their first 12 months of adulting life. A lot of things, tried on a lot of things. I also gained some wisdom from books of trying things that my childhood self liked to do. So I went back to organizing and cleaning and reading comic books and going to the library and things that I hadn't done in years and years and years to see if maybe I would like this again. But grief makes us into different people, and so there's this process just of going on these involuntary scavenger hunts to find, to discover, to remember, to choose who that new person is. And I just love this phrase. I stumbled upon it while I was editing the podcast this week, and I just really wanted to share it with all of you this week because I think it's just so fitting. And sometimes journey, road, path, it sounds too easy. It sounds too straightforward. It sounds too smooth. And grief just isn't like that. So I definitely really wanted to share the involuntary scavenger hunt element with you this week. If you were on a scavenger hunt, I would love to know from you kind of what phase, what stage you're in, what you're discovering, where you found it or heard about it, or if it's something that just cropped up for you and you're like, I think I'll follow this thread for a while in reinventing myself post-loss. And if you're looking for ideas to go on your own grief scavenger hunt, start with things you like to do as a kid. Maybe that would be a good starting place for you, or things that your loved one liked to do that you were always curious about but never explored, or maybe trying on things that your friends have done, or if you have something on your bucket list that you haven't quite tried yet or haven't mustered up the strength to try, maybe your after loss self would be into that, would be into trying. And worst case scenario, if you try it and it doesn't work for you, drop it, take up something else, and just see what happens. That's the whole rigmarole. That's the way it goes in a grief scavenger hunt. You're just trying things on, and we don't want to be there. We don't want to be trying things on, but that's the way of it. In our reinventing and our recalibrating and our readjusting to this new life after loss, that's just the way it works, is to try on. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, discard. Going on these little threads, little pieces, little scavenger hunts all along the way to kind of find out who we are and what truths and what things loss has left us with. What is left of us and what is there left to find. But that's kind of my little nugget of wisdom for you this week, a reframing of this road, this path, this journey that grief sets us upon. So if you have any thoughts on grief being an involuntary scavenger hunt, I would love to hear them in the comments below and start a conversation. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Thanks so much for joining me, grief growers. I love you.